What's good, everybody? Of course, this is Stephen Qualls II, and this is Qualified, and this is the first Qualified kind of special an interview that you've seen in a very long time. And we're doing it through Zoom because of, Lil Rona. But I have a very, very, very special guest, somebody very close and dear to my heart that I'll be talking to today. And it is actually my younger sister. You probably can see the resemblance, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, go ahead, Aliyah. Just introduce yourself first and tell the people a little bit more about yourself before I get into the questions.
Sure. So my name is Aliyah, as Steven said. I go by Aliyah Danielle in my artistic endeavors. So if you're looking for me, make sure you go by Aliyah Danielle. But I'm a musician. Primarily, I play French horn and sing. But I also dabble in a couple of other instruments. I have my bachelor's degree in music education from Arizona State University. And yeah, I do a little bit of everything. So, yeah.
I was gonna say dabble is an understatement. She's gonna be modest, but it's okay. We're gonna get her out of that. But no, I'll just start with the first question for you. So it's kind of weird asking you this because I feel like I know a lot of the answers to these questions already, but I want them to know as well. But where do you feel like your love for music began, and then at what age did you know music was going to be like a huge part of your life? Like what age did you know I'm probably going to be doing music, for the rest of my life, or a good portion of it at least?
Sure. So as you probably know, we grew up in the church, and I think that's pretty much the basis of that's the first place I really experienced any kind of music making, really, besides listening to music like on the radio and stuff like that. But it's a lot different when you're a part of making music than just listening to it. And our mom is a choir director, so instead of us just staying at home with babysitters, she would just take us to rehearsal. So like pretty much all the time up until we could stay at home by ourselves, we would be at rehearsals every week and watching her practice at home and people coming over to learn stuff and at church. So it was just always constantly around music. And then in addition to her church choir direction, she also had like a side band that she had with some friends that I eventually played with them. And they would play for like weddings and different special events and things around the city, just as like little extra gigs and stuff. And so that was really the foundation of my musical interest. I didn't realize it at the time, but like looking back on it now, that was practically what it was. And then how I got into band instruments is I really picked trumpet in 4th grade because when you were in band, you got to leave your class for a certain amount of time every week. And I just wanted to leave class. Like I wasn't actually interested in being in band. I just wanted to leave class. So that, I guess I kind of like stumbled upon in a way. But I actually really did come to enjoy it. So I played the trumpet first from 4th through 6th grade. And then in 7th grade is when I started the French horn, and I've played that ever since. When I was in 8th grade, my school merged with a high school. So they were trying to, the high schools weren't doing that well in our school district. And so they would take like a poorly performing high school and merge it with a high performing middle school to kind of get the enrollment better, to try and make the high schools better performing. But that also meant that we needed to do what high school bands do, which was marching band. And at the time, I didn't really know much about marching band because I was like 12. But French horns don't typically perform in marching bands, or not in the traditional French horn. It's a different instrument called a mellophone. But I didn't know any of this stuff back then. And my band director didn't want, I still don't know why, but I was pretty good at the trumpet before I switched. And so for marching band, I played the trumpet instead of the French horn because I didn't have a mellophone or know anything about it. And when that season was over for marching, I wanted to switch back to French horn because that's my main instrument, and she wouldn't let me. So it was just a long process of like bullying and stuff. And eventually I ended up, my mom took me out of the program just because it was putting a lot of unnecessary stress on me as like a 13-year-old. And it wasn't until I could not do band that I realized how much I actually liked band. And I think that was like a defining moment in what made me say like, oh, I really like doing this. And I don't feel like myself now that I can't do it. And so I think that whole situation with my band director and being taken out of band and stuff was definitely the pivotal moment that made me kind of realize that's what I wanted to do.
Okay. I think I vaguely remember those times for sure. Who knows what I was doing? Probably
It's
something
like 10
playing
years ago now.
basketball. Yeah, probably
Yeah.
somewhere I play basketball. You know me. I didn't. My music love didn't really manifest until later in
Hmm.
life. I just took it a completely different direction, which I'm honestly upset about. I wish I had learned. I wish I had took learning instruments more seriously, even if I like didn't play or like yeah, even if I didn't like necessarily want to play, just to have the skill to always rely on. I hate saying mom is right, but here we
Never
are.
too late though.
Here we are. So yeah, so you described a lot of your musical journey. I know you didn't go past that part. So like after you realized, how much you want to do band, of course you continued and did get back into playing and doing a lot of other things. So speak to that. I mean, you already mentioned what the pivotal moment of your career was, but speak to what happened after that pivotal moment and how you started approaching and kind of attacking the challenge of learning music and learning these different instruments as you continue to go forward after that moment.
Yeah. So when I got into high school, because I was in 8th grade, so I wasn't in band for the rest of 8th grade, but I rejoined it when I got to high school. And a lot of my experience in high school was like, because French horn is not a super common instrument, especially among like inner city schools. I hate saying inner city, but I don't know how else to describe it. City schools, I guess. Yeah, But so my first year, there were only two of us. Actually, the whole time I was there were only two of us. But the other girl had like just started, so she wasn't really able to like hold parts and stuff. So I was automatically the person who had to play like all the solos and all of the like lead parts and stuff like that. So it was actually a really good learning experience, because while I probably wasn't necessarily ready to do that, just kind of like throwing you in and getting the experience you need for that. But I'm actually really grateful for that, because it taught me a lot and helped me gain confidence throughout high school, because I had no other option but to do that. And in addition to French horn, I also I did the jazz band and I did the drum line in high school as well. So I kind of got to expand upon my just playing one instrument and got to do like some other different kinds of things too. I don't know if I knew what I wanted to study in college, but the same band director that I had the situation with in 8th grade, she suffered a heart attack and passed away suddenly when I was a junior in high school. And I hadn't really thought about that situation since it happened, but it was at that time that I realized how getting that kind of taken away from me kind of ignited my drive, I think. And if that had never happened, I don't know if I would have been as driven to pursue music as I was. And so that was what led me to want to study music education, because I felt like if she had that much of a negative impact on me as a music teacher, like how much of a positive impact that I have on students in the future. And so that was why I wanted to study music education. Then I went to college and it was pretty much the same stuff, like studying classical stuff and technique and all of that stuff. And somewhere down the line, I was like, this is cool, but like, there's probably other stuff that I could be doing too, because it didn't occur to me at the time, but like the stuff that I would listen to at home and like not on school time it felt so foreign to what I was studying, even though it really wasn't that far off. But the way that conservatory systems are set up in music schools, which most music schools are conservatory style, is that you study classical music or you study jazz music. And there's not really that much overlap or exploration that you get to do. So they never seemed like they could meld like what I was interested in outside of school and what I was studying in school. And a lot of that really changed for me when my sophomore year of college. I was in a really bad car accident and my car like flipped all the way over. And I had my seatbelt on, which was wear your seatbelt all the time, because that's the thing that saved my life. But the car was totaled. Luckily, nothing inside was damaged. I was fine. I had like a scratch on my knee. That was it. And that was just by the grace of God. But it really put a lot of things into perspective, because I was like, I could be really badly injured or worse right now. And it really took me thinking, like, what have I been doing? And have I really been doing what I want to be doing, or what I feel like I need to be doing? And I learned that I wasn't doing that. So I did finish out my degree in music education, but throughout time, I kind of realized that I was putting off the performance side, which had been so much of what I did as I was growing up. And that really is, I think, where my main passion lies, is in making music and just making emotional connections with people through music. And so I started to kind of focus on that more towards the end of my college career. And now I'm really focusing on that. I'm doing freelance work and just independent work in performing. But a couple of other things that kind of helped me realize that too were something I've recently been into within just the past couple of years is musical theater. Because seeing different shows in musical theater helped me realize how there's so many different types of artistic people involved in making that production come together, where like in a classical music recital, you just need like the soloist and a piano player, and that's it. In a musical theater show, you need actors who can sing and dance, and you need an orchestra who can play the parts, and you need lighting people who can make the things look nice. You need visual people who can make the set look right. You need sound people who can make it sound. So it's like all of these people need to work together, and I really like collaborating with people. So I think seeing that and just kind of exposing myself to different areas of music outside of like the strict, like play this Mozart or this etude, whatever, really helps me kind of see like, oh, like I don't have to just go down this one straight path. Like there are different things that I could do. And so now I'm kind of in an exploratory phase of trying to figure out where I could go from here. So
Yeah, I mean, like hearing your journey is like, I don't feel like I'm learning nothing. I don't feel like I'm learning anything new, but at the same time, I guess there's a lot I never, I guess, really understood about certain musical aspects, especially from the standpoint of playing, and especially from the aspect of certain genres, or just certain, like you said, like as far as like theater, I would have never thought of everything that goes into musical theater, just because it's not something that I've really paid attention to. But to know that you've been a part of that for some time, I think just honestly speaks to a lot of things you've mentioned in terms of, especially the piece about why you got into music education. I honestly didn't even know that was the exact reason why you got into music education. Yeah. But it is something that's understanding. I mean, I think it's a similar way why I ended up taking somewhat of an education route for my master's as it relates to sports, for the same concept and same story of just wanting to change the perception of seeing how, I had, negative coaches, and, how that affected me, and what could be the difference if, somebody has a positive coach that's pushing them in a different direction. Yeah, I mean, of course, I know we don't talk about that time as much, but I think things like, accents. I mean, of course, like, I had one this past, the end of last year as well. So I think they do change perspective, just because you always realize just how worse it can be. And it does kind of push you to make sure that you're not taking anything for granted, and especially time, because you just never know when you're not going to have that time anymore. So it's beautiful. So I'm happy. But no. So okay, lighting the mood just a tinge. But how many instruments do you play, and then what would you say is your favorite instrument? And don't lie about the number of instruments you play.
I have to think. Okay, so I'll tell you the instruments I have played. Right now, I'm pretty much focusing on piano, French horn, and vocals. But like I mentioned earlier, I started out on the trumpet, so that was the first band instrument that I played. I also played drum set here and there, and I've also played the trombone. So I think that's 6. And then I play some other stuff like ukulele and recorder, but like that doesn't really count because everybody does that.
Does everybody do that?
I feel like a lot of people play the ukulele. It's not hard to learn.
A lot of people is everybody.
If you want to learn how to play the ukulele, it's a good place to start. But what's my favorite one? I don't know if I can pick a favorite. I guess I would say the ones that I'm focusing on right now are my favorite. It's kind of like asking you to pick your favorite child, which is like kind of impossible to do.
I think that's why mom says I'm her favorite son and you're her favorite daughter.
Yeah, because like we're the only one, but you know, okay. But I like all of them for different reasons because they can do so many different things. And with my voice, I've sung like in choir and stuff. But it wasn't until recently, like within the past couple of years, that I really started to actually develop my voice and think of myself like as a singer, which it sounds weird, but I would just be like, oh yeah, I sing in choir. I'm not a singer. But now I'm kind of like, I'm still have some like, you know, working on my confidence and some skills that I need to build, but I could actually see myself like singing as well as I play horn or as well as I play piano too. But horn, I don't know. I just fell in love with that instrument ever since the beginning. It's like every movie you ever liked is because there's a horn in it, and like the horn made you cry or the horn made you feel like strong or something. It's like, it's, I don't know. And a lot of people don't know what it sounds like, but a horn is in so many like movie scores, video game scores.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those instruments that there's such a range of emotion you can get out of it that I think is really cool, because it's like if you it's something I really like about like the film industry too, is like how music affects what we see on screen. That's something else that I want to like research that's really interesting too. But for instance, the main one that I think about recently is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse has a really cool score with like really prominent French horn parts. And the scene where, well, spoiler alert, I don't know if y'all have seen this movie, but the scene where he finds out that his uncle is the dude, I forgot what the character's name is, but like the evil guy. And the horn is like playing that thing. It's like, if you imagine that scene with no music, it would be like, oh, that's sad. But then like the horn in there, you're like, you know, like it just adds a whole other dimension of emotion. And I really like that it can do that. So I guess I would say horn.
That's right. I mean, and that would make sense. That's the one you've been playing the longest, and that's the one you've decided to stick with. And I mean, I mean, I've always kind of been, I've always been proud of you for that, because I feel like, one, you don't see many people of color, you know, just being honest, especially with that particular instrument, but then to have the passion and then to also be ambitious with it. I don't know how many people would want to do covers of pop and you know, even hip hop and R&B songs with the French horn. You don't hear that often. So I think just even the ambition of that is something, I think, that just speaks to everything you've mentioned up to this point. And kind of touching back on the music education piece, how would you say education is a passion for you at this point, and what has it been like combining your love for music and your passion for music with your, you know, love and passion for education and wanting to really inform people and have a positive impact? How do those two roles, you know, in themselves kind of intertwine?
Yeah, education for me has always been like a huge passion of mine, because like the whole knowledge is power thing, like it's really true. And something that our mom instilled in us is just like, always get your education. Like there was no negotiation sorry, about whether or not we were going to school, which I don't think if we had decided to go a different route, like she would have been supportive, but pretty much when we were young, it was like, if you get your degree, like nobody can take that from you. And it just opens so many more doors. And so that's something that has always been instilled in me. It's something that I realized, if I'm tying it into music, is that so much of what we teach is so Eurocentric. It's like this Western European art style of music. And that's not reflective at all of what we actually are listening to or what people are paying to go see.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, classical music, people go to orchestra concerts and stuff. And I'm not discounting that classical music is great, because it is. But there's so much other stuff that we listen to. For instance, like your podcast and everything else that you do, that's a whole other art form in itself that some people in the classical music world would just automatically discount because of how it sounds, or because of how the artists look, or because maybe they say the N-word or they call a girl a B-word or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it's like, you're not listening to and understanding why that music is being made that way. And that's worthy of study just as much as I'm studying Mozart, who also wrote music about misogyny and like abuse. But it's in Italian and it's underneath this beautifully scored orchestra. So like no one wants to talk about it, you know? So that's something that is that bothers me, is that we kind of put this one form of music on a pedestal for, you know, in today's climate. We all know why that is. But it's been that way for years. And I think that it would be much more beneficial, and we could reach more people if we talk about different kinds of music. It's like, your Black students deserve to learn about the history of hip hop music. It's like, oh, I always hear this music at my house, but like, we just like it. I don't know why, you know, but it's like, you can talk about why that music makes you feel that way, or why that artist wrote that song in the first place. And we never give that music, unless it's, you know, a conversation with your family or something. You never really talk about that, or you know, take it upon yourself to look that stuff up. So that piece is just I think the equity in terms of what is taught is really important to me. And then also the representation aspect of who is being shown doing certain things. So for instance, in classical music, I think I got lucky because they kind of balance each other out, but being a person of color as a classical musician is a disadvantage, as well as being a woman, and I'm both of those things. So luckily though, throughout my training classically, most of my instructors were actually women. So like my first horn teacher that I studied with from 7th grade all the way through high school was a woman, and I've had a lot of women mentors. My band teacher in middle school was a woman, and that was something that I think, again, not realizing at the time, but that I was like, oh, they're a girl, I'm a girl, so I can do this. But the one thing that I was always aware of was that, like, oh, I'm the only Black person here, or like, wow, I can count all the Black people on one hand, you know, things like that. And it's not that we're not doing it, it's just that we don't have the platform or the visibility, I think, that we deserve, because of like what I said before with, you know, I don't want to say classical music is reserved for white people, but it can feel that way sometimes because of how the systems are built and how they work. And that's honestly kind of part of what turned me off. Like, I have no desire to play in an orchestra anytime soon because of those kinds of things. It doesn't feel like the system is built for us to thrive. And I, you know, why put myself in an environment where I'm not going to thrive? That's just my personal take on it. Representation. So it's also very important for me, like as a brass player, and recently especially, because I've started working on some early business plans for something I want to do, is just learning about how many other, specifically people of color that play brass. So that includes Black people, Hispanic people, and Asian Americans, Indigenous people, and stuff like that. Are doing that, and how many kids, like, I think all the time about how different my perception of being a brass player would have been had I known more people of color, or more Black people, I guess in my case, were actually doing that. Because now I'm like, oh, all these people were doing this all along, I just never knew they were there. And so part of what I want my business to do is to increase that visibility, have teaching artists of color, you know, like it would be so impactful to have a Black woman teaching a Black child to play the trumpet, or like a Mexican guy teaching a Mexican child to play the trombone, or whatever it is. That has such an impact, because even deeper than just like, are you playing this note right, or are you doing this technique right, or whatever. It's like, I can understand a little bit of what you might experience in the world, more than someone who doesn't look like you might not. And that's a big thing for me too, and it's very important in education. But the other thing too is, I think that the education system, especially the U.S. Department of Education, is just so flawed. And I, in terms of what I want to do, I want nothing to do with that. I would like to eventually maybe like help inform, you know, policies or something that do go into the U.S. Department of Education, but like teaching even the curriculum that we teach in schools is Eurocentric, and they still use like racist songs and stuff. And it's like, oh, here's a song that's going to teach the kids this solfege note, so teach it to them. Meanwhile, the history is like about selling a slave or something like that. But nobody wants to talk about that, because we're just learning do, re, mi. So it's okay. Like, you know, that's not okay, because you have Black kids learning these songs, or, you know, and so we just need to be more conscious, I think, overall. There's another part of that question. I kind of went on a tangent, but I forgot what it is. But anyway, what was the second part?
That was pretty much it. It was just more so like how the passions combined, and you definitely touched on that. I mean, I feel it's crazy. Like, Mom said this before too, but I think it's crazy that the parallels and what we both want to do and like the path we're on now, they're actually way more similar than I think we would realize, like just saying them. out loud. But in terms of both taking our personal passions of you music and me sports, at least more so sports for me, and both tying them into education and wanting to teach people, wanting to be able to inform and have an impact. I mean, one, I think that goes back to mom, because I don't think we realize, well, I'm just now more so now realizing how much of a teacher, mom really was. I mean, of course she was a choir director, but I just thinking there's so much teaching that goes into that I don't think I really kind of understood, and in the way she raised us, I think it's not surprising to see that we both kind of took a educator route. I know this is a question I didn't send you, so if you don't want to answer it or can't answer it, I understand. But I just think your answer kind of sparked the question for me. Speak to, I know you've had feelings in the past of some kind of like imposter syndrome, and I know you spoke to like being, of course, like the only Black one, but you're in this field, you're obviously very talented, but you can't get away from that. You start to notice that your circle is not necessarily maybe the way you want it to look, or maybe the way you feel like it's supposed to look, the way people are telling you it's supposed to look. And I know for me, I've always been seen as the more social and everything, but even within that, I've always kind of been overly conscious of how I'm perceived when I am in those spaces, because I know I'm going to have to be in those spaces when it comes to educating, when it comes to sports. I know past intelligence, I'm going to be seen essentially, as a Black person first, more likely, before the intelligence even comes into play. So speak to that, from a musician and an educator level, like how you kind of, dealt with that and how you kind of overcome that feeling of, imposter syndrome, and just touch on that a little bit.
Yeah. So as a kid, and this goes even deeper than just the music, but as a kid, even just from growing up, like I've always been very articulate, and we all know, like, when a Black person is articulate, it's like, why do you talk white? I'm like, right. I'm just talking how I talk. Like, I'm not trying to talk white or anything. And I think that part of that, not when I was like really young, like I wouldn't say in kindergarten I was aware of that yet, but I think that once I got older to a point where I was kind of more understanding of like racial or just social, cultural kind of like lines, I guess you could call them. I was like hyper aware that I was different. So kind of like you said, you're hyper aware of how people perceive you. For me, it was less about how people perceive me. It is more like they're going to see that I, like, you look at this orchestra and it's like, boom, there she is, because I'm the only one, or there's like 2 or 3 of us and we're all.
It was easy to spot you at your concerts. It really was. It was.
Yeah, and that's fine. But I think that, like, I was for so long just wanted people to see me as a horn player instead of like, oh, a Black horn player, which now, like, I'm like, that's great. Like, call me Blackie, the Black horn player. Like, but for a long time, I was just like, why do I need to be a Black horn player? Why can't I just be a horn player? And to some degree, I still, feel that way, because for some people, putting Black in front of it, that in itself has different associations. Like you said, people are going to see you as a Black person first. And so in some ways I do as like, just see me as a horn player. But at the same time, I now realize, and something that like is a part of my, like, just my, like, I guess, outlook on my artistry, is that regardless of what I do, people are going to see me, they're going to see my skin color. And I can use that, like, I can let that be a discouragement to me, or I can use it as a positive. So it's like, yeah, Black people play classical music and they can play it really well, just as well as other people do. Or like, oh, Black people can do classical music and they can do R&B music, and it sounds great, both of them, And so I think I'm taking it more in a way to make a positive out of it, rather than being like, oh, boo-hoo, I'm Black and everyone only sees me as Black, instead of kind of victimizing myself, just like using it as a thing, like, yeah, I'm Black, I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this. But you don't want to try to do this because you think this is better, not to like make myself sound better than anyone or anything like that, because that's not how I mean it. But I think I'm in an interesting position, like at this intersection of 2 different worlds, that I can, maybe bridge the 2 worlds together, or help one side see what the other side might feel, because I'm at a place where I have access to different things than people on either side might. And I think that's an advantage that I have like a privilege that I have that I can use to kind of make the world a better place. So.
Yeah, no, and I think, and I'm glad you realized that, but I think it's something that more people deal with. And like you said, it goes deeper than music. It's not, I mean, it can play into that, but I think just in general, there's a lot of people that deal with the pressure of stereotypes and what's expected solely based off of how we're raised or where we're from. I mean, I still get it, you know, like there are some people that are surprised that I'm from Milwaukee, you know, like here in Missouri, or when I was in school. And it's like they didn't know, you know, what people from Milwaukee were like, but I wasn't what they expected. At least from somebody who seemed to just be like more aware. Like I guess they assume Milwaukee's in Wisconsin, and more people associate the stereotypes of Wisconsin than Milwaukee, you know. So it's like they immediately think, you know, they don't know how I have Jordans because clearly I live on a farm or something, you know, or something like that. But I just want to touch on that. Almost done, you know, but definitely want you to touch on Up With People and just speak to exactly what that is, and then how that experience that you've had in the last couple of years with them has impacted you as not only a musician but an educator as well.
Sure. So it's actually really funny. How I got involved with Up With People was I was having a quarter-life crisis my junior year of college. So that was when I first started to, I kind of touched on this in the 2 questions ago. But so I did study music education, but I realized as I started to get into my practicum courses and like my field experience that teaching in the classroom didn't quite align with my personal philosophy of education. And also just like I said before, like the U.S. Department of Education and the way that our system is run puts a number of students at a disadvantage, and I can't support that because like I would be one of those students that would be disadvantaged. So I started, you know, I wouldn't have been able to put it in those words like 2 or 3 years ago when it started happening, but I started to feel like something wasn't right. And so after this semester of this class, one of my practicum classes that I was taking, I got an email, and it was like this study abroad program open to music majors. You go visit so-and-so city and so-and-so city or whatever. And I didn't even read the whole email. Like I just read the subject and I saw study abroad in music, and then I just applied for it. Cause I was, you know how sometimes you're in a mood and you just like do stuff without thinking about it. Most of the time it's me buying stuff on Amazon, but that time it was applying to this study abroad program. And so, where's I going with that? Oh, so I got accepted and worked with mom and we made the payments and everything. And so I really didn't know much about it, but we did like some orientation things before we went there. And so basically what Up With People is it's a music and service organization. The motto or the mission of Up With People is through music and action, we inspire youth to be positive agents of change. So a big part of the experience is it's kind of like a musical variety show. So there's different songs that we do, dances, medleys of things like that, but everything carries a message. So for instance, in the show, there is a song about mental health. There's a song about racism. There's a song about activism. So there's different things, you know, and these songs that like you would just kind of be like, oh, this sounds really cool. But they're all telling a message, which I think is a really cool way. And like something for somebody like me who really connects with music as, you know, a way of feeling things, like that's really cool to me. But on top of that, we also do different community action at the different sites. So it really depends on whatever that community needs the week that we're there, we'll do. So the tour that when I first went for the study abroad, it was only for 2 weeks, but normally a tour with them lasts up to 6 months, or you could even do a year, depending on if you want to, basically. But the tour lasts 6 months. Ours was cut short because of Corona, but we did our staging and got to go to 3 different cities. So it was for 7 weeks that we were there. And some of the things we did was we went and helped spread mulch on a nature preserve in Nevada. And we went to a school to do workshops for young students in Colorado. And we made, one of them is we made like bags for a meal service program, just putting like positive messages on the bag to help people feel, you know, positive and stuff like that. So it really depends. And I'm sure we would have done like much more variety of stuff because we only got to go to 3 cities on a 15-city tour. So we probably would have done a lot more, but it really just depends on what that community needs us to do, and then we do it. I know in the past they've helped like build houses for people, they've planted trees, they've done panels and workshops and things like that. So it really just depends on what the community needs, and that's the community action aspect of it. And then the other cool thing that I really enjoy, because I like to travel a lot, but which we didn't get to do much on our tour, but we would have, if we had done the whole tour, we ended in Vegas. Before that, we were in Flagstaff, and then we did a city called Lafayette, Colorado. After that, we would have gone to 2 cities in Arizona. We would have gone to California. We have gone to 4 cities, I think, I don't know, provinces. I don't know what they're called in Canada, but like 4 places in Canada. And then we would have gone to 2 cities in Belgium, 1 in Germany, and 1 in the Netherlands, I think. Maybe it's 2 in Germany. I don't remember. But we had like so many more places that we would have gone. And for me, it was just cool to be able to see all of the different people. Like I'm a people watcher. And so I just like observing people. And for instance, like the difference in Flagstaff and Vegas was just like, it was just funny to me because people are just so different. But, you know, it's like when you go to different places, people behave differently, but it's also an opportunity, one, for me to learn about different cultures and different people, but I can also bring my culture and my experience to them in an experience or in a opportunity they might not have somewhere else. Like they might never get to meet a Black girl who plays the French horn from Milwaukee, Wisconsin ever. But like now that I'm coming, you know, maybe staying in your house or performing this show for you, you get to meet me and kind of peek into my life a little bit, and I get to learn about yours too. So I think that was my favorite part, the cultural exchange, aside from the music performance too. So it's a cool program.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I don't know why Mom was so adamant about trying to get me to do it. I think she always wants us to do the same thing. The same way she tried to all force us to live in Arizona.
Yeah.
But it's okay. She's just being a mom. But okay, what would you say is your dream job or your dream project?
Okay, so I don't have one dream job because my brain does not work like that. But the I have a few. Actually, I made a list of this a few weeks ago because I have to like hold myself accountable to actually try these things. But something that I'm working on right now that I would really like is to write a musical and like get it staged. Like Broadway would be cool, but also like off Broadway or some regional theater or something would also be really cool. Because like I said, like that medium of storytelling, I think is one of my favorites. One, because I mean, I like film too, but musical theater is live. So you get that like the actors can feed off of the audience and that energy is flowing, and that's just something that you can't do when you're watching a screen because it's already recorded. But also just thinking about all the people that are involved. And I know that in the midst of what's happening right now, like the Broadway community is also having to take a look at themselves and how they've contributed to the systemic racism in this country. And the show is it's like loosely based on my journey, but I essentially want it to follow this character who goes to this school in her city that has kind of like a patched together music program. And she's not really a part of the music program. She's kind of like adding on because it's a band program and she sings. And so she kind of works with the band to kind of develop that. And she sings in church and stuff, but there's nobody really around her that can help her. She's never like trained or anything like that. It's all self-taught. And so she gets an opportunity to go to this school to learn all of this stuff, but she's the only one. She's one of the only, there's 2 Black students there, including her when she gets there. And so just kind of a coming of age kind of thing, and just an experiential kind of like, you know, thing about what experiences a person of color might go through in an environment like that, which is what I lived through. But I think putting it in that form, and then also just like encouraging diversity, because it's not like it would be an entirely Black cast. I would want there to be a lot of Black people, because like that's what I grew up around. And I think Black theater artists deserve so much more recognition than they get. But also talking about, like, I think for me, it's more about showcasing, like, this is what the world looks like. Like, it's not just one color and it's not just one gender. And like the moral being, like, yeah, we might look different, but we all have, we all have problems, and we all have certain privileges, and we all have certain disadvantages, and just kind of helping us to empathize with each other rather than like arguing with each other over things that we really can't control. So that's one of them I want to do. A big thing for me is I really want to perform with Beyonce. She's never performed with French horn players before, but I'm somehow going to make it happen. So I'm speaking it into the universe. And then I want to be like Lizzo 2.0. Like, Lizzo is killing the game with her flute and her singing. And also, more kids started to learn to play the flute because of Lizzo. And I'm like, that would be so cool. I believe that. Love to have a bunch of little kids trying to play the French horn, because I did that. So I'm still working on the vocals. They're good, but they can be better. So I'm working on that and working on the horn stuff. And it would be really cool to be like Aliyah, but like Lizzo. I can't be Aliyah. There was already an Aliyah. That's why I'm Aliyah Danielle. So
fair. Understood. Yeah. I mean, you were named after her. You just don't have the second A. That's all.
Yep.
Okay, but last but certainly not least, I want you to tell the world why you are qualified.
I hate questions like this because I am not good at talking about myself, but I will attempt to say something that is cohesive. Let's see. I think something. No, not I think. I know. Words are important. Something that I do really admire is about my personality is that when I see a problem and I want to fix it, I'm like full speed ahead. Like, what do we need to do to fix this problem? And whatever it takes. And I think that's something that I've always had, but a lot of times when I was younger, especially, I would kind of like diminish certain parts of my personality to not stick out, like going back into that hyper awareness of being different thing. It's like, I'm already this different. So like, I don't want to like make any more, draw any more attention to myself. But I'm starting to learn that being different doesn't have to be bad. Like, different is just different. It's not good. It's not bad. It just is. And I think that passion for helping people and for fixing problems really helps make me qualified. And the fact that I am willing to do whatever it takes. It's not like, oh, like I want to fix this problem, but I have to, I have to take a nap right now, so I can't do that right. It's like sometimes if I need to go and do all of this stuff, like I'll do it, or I'll find the people who can help me do that. And I think the other thing that makes me qualified too is like something I've recently learned, especially, is just the power of collaboration and teamwork is so much better. So like, and I guess this is kind of like, again, taking the focus off of me, but I'm so much better when I can work with other people who have similar viewpoints and similar goals and stuff to me. And for instance, like I'm working on a upcoming project for my YouTube channel right now that uses like 16 or 17 people. And the outcome is going to be really amazing, but like I never would have been able to do that by myself. And so I think that it takes a really secure person to kind of like let go a little bit of the reins and be like, oh, these people can help me and it can actually make me stronger. And it's not like, oh, I don't want to ask anyone to help me because I don't want to take any focus off of me. But I think that we really are like stronger together when we can work together. So that kind of is a deflection of like focus on me, but that's really important to me too. And I think that in terms of being qualified, like what can make me better is by working with people who make me better. And so that's something I really like to focus on too. I hope I answered your question.
You did. I was just gonna say you qualified because you're my little sister. You know what I'm saying? But that's just me. Reason. But no, thank you so much for all your answers and for letting people into your world. I know how hard that is for you, so thank you for talking with me.
Yeah.
But no, I will definitely have all the links to her channel for sure. Definitely go subscribe. You will not be disappointed. She releases great content all the time. Her socials will be on there as well, so you can follow her and see all the things that she jokes about on social media as well. She's actually a pretty funny person for y'all that don't know. But yeah, until next time, thank you so much, little sis, for being my very, very first guest as Qualified gets back rolling. So thank you again, and we'll see y'all next time.
Ever took the time to wonder why? I wonder who these niggas get funded by. Read between the lines, underline. Every really took the time to wonder.